And that's where I get started with Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. So, yes, you will meet people that will have an effect on your life. The first year I went as an audience member. The second year I was up talking. So it can happen that quickly.
No, that's the same. I believe you and I first met there 2 years ago. We all met, and then last year I was up there speaking. So it happens that fast, So
it does. I mean, because we are the grassroots. I mean, we are the gun lobby. We are the people who care, who really care. All of us care about our rights, but there's a group of us who actually put it on the line and spend our own money and spend our time off to go out there and further our Second Amendment rights. And I think that's an important thing. And the more people that show up to these type of things, it's like recharging your batteries every year. I'm inspired every time I go. You meet people that you don't expect to meet.
Right.
You make new friends. It's awesome. It really is. It's an awesome experience, and I encourage. And it's free.
Yeah.
Okay. And you get a pile of books.
Yeah, you're going to come home with a reference library like you didn't think possible on Second Amendment and gun rights issues. Yeah. So
there's a lot of perks, but most importantly, it's really the interaction. It's meeting people. It's hearing what people are doing. We all don't have to invent the wheel. There are other people who've already invented it. We can kind of work together and get things done together.
Yeah, this is put on by the Second Amendment Foundation, so it's saf.org/GRPC. Check them out there. It's a great thing.
It's also a great place to not work against each other.
Yeah.
You're putting forth one agenda, and it's not as important as it may be once was, but you want to put together a consolidated front against the anti-gun lobbies. This is the place to have those conversations.
Right, and the Second Amendment Foundation is very good at long-term thinking and long-term planning. These guys really have an idea of what they want to do, where they want to go. They pick their cases very carefully, and so that they don't goon themselves. They don't put one in front of the other, which will actually stop things from moving forward. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan and now Andrew are it's incredible what they're putting together out there, and they do it year after year. So, hey, Dr. John, we had an incident occur in the Bronx-Lebanon Hospital. Now, we've had you on here several times talking about the opportunity, the rights of doctors, medical staff, and everybody else to exercise their Second Amendment rights is something that we'd love to see. You'd love to see them be able to do. And now we have another shooting at a hospital. What can you tell us about what happened there, and what your movement may have been able to do had or change the situation there had these officials had their own firearms to protect themselves?
Well, this is the person who did the shooting was a man named Henry Bello, but his real name is Henry Williams Obo-Tetakudo, and he was an immigrant from Nigeria. He was initially reported as being a family practice doctor, but it turns out he was not a doctor, that he was a pharmacy technician.
Right.
And this man had been in and out of trouble, apparently, over the past several years. He was arrested for a sexual assault, and it was pled down to a non-felony. And then there was also another sexual, I don't know if it was an assault or just.
I think there were some harassment complaints at the job there, yeah.
Right, sexual harassment complaint, and they asked him to resign.
Right.
And he also lost his license to practice as a pharmacy technician in the state of New York, and that was a couple of years ago. So this guy's had a couple of years to plan. A couple of weeks ago, he buys a New York compliant AR-15 variant with the 10-round magazines, and he puts his white coat on and walks through whatever security they have at this hospital, goes up to one of the top floors and is looking for a specific person, can't find that person, and then he just starts shooting a bunch of folks. I think he shot, wounded 6, killed 1 female doctor, and then tried to light the place on fire. The sprinklers went off. He tried to light himself on fire, apparently, and then finally he shot himself. So here we are. We're in this gun-free zone, and this shows the failure of all these gun controls.
Correct.
First of all, he passed the background checks.
Right.
Why? because he was able to plead down his felony, a sexual assault, to a misdemeanor. So if the prosecutors had done their job and prosecuted this guy, but because he was a foreign national and an immigrant and being politically correct, they pled down. We can't hold him accountable.
Right.
And so he's able to pass the background check and get the New York compliant, stringent, altered, crazy-looking, AR-15 rifle and smuggle it into the hospital underneath a white coat. The question is, did he still have his ID badge or not? That the security guards at these hospitals are not armed, so even if they did discover the guy had a rifle, I doubt they could stop him.
Yeah, listen, and there's pictures of this rifle on there. You can take a look at it. The police took the picture at the scene. This is a 20, maybe even a 21-inch barrel with the style of flash hider he's got on there. It's got the crazy 10-round magazine. There's no sights on the thing. It's got the long stock. The thing's probably anywhere from 36 to 40 inches long.
Right.
And yet he still puts it under the lab coat, takes it inside. Now, John, like you said, this is New York compliant. This is a gun that shouldn't be it shouldn't be able to kill people. It doesn't have a bayonet lug. They took that off of there. It doesn't have a flash hider. It's just got a...
That's what I was going to correct you with. There's no flash hider on it.
It's a muzzle brake, not a flash hider. Mm-hmm. Or it doesn't have anything at all. It's just a very long barrel. The pistol grip's been removed because you can't have a protruding pistol grip under the SAFE Act. But yet, this gun that they fought so hard to get these bans in place, this gun was still able to kill people. I don't know how that's happened, John. It's clear this gun shouldn't have been able to kill somebody.
Well, maybe it's the unsafe act then, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's like we say, the problem with the gun laws is the people that don't know guns or the people that are anti-gun make the gun laws. So.
Right, and the bottom line here, it's not the gun. We all know that.
Yeah.
It's the actor. It's the person. This guy obviously had some issues, whether he was mentally ill or just he had issues with culture and could not assimilate. The problem is that a lot of the people that come to the United States from places, where the culture is very different, they're not trying to assimilate anymore. It used to be when you came to the United States, you learned English, you became, probably one of the best advocates for the American way of life. And now, they separate themselves. There are no-go zones in a lot of big cities in the United States.
Right.
Because people of one ethnic variety or religious bent or whatever you want to call it, they are now in charge, and the police don't go there. It happens both in Europe and in the United States.
Yeah.
And so, this is a real problem. So it's not just, whether it's a religious thing or a cultural thing. It's a failure to assimilate, and it's us against them, so to speak. They're out there, and they don't look at us like we're human beings. We're just, the women are, toys to be played with, or they're there to be dominated by the man, and it just doesn't fit with our culture. Now we end up with these kind of problems.
John, we got a break coming up here. If you could hang out for a couple more minutes, I'd like to talk to you about how we could change this. How not obviously the culture, that's something, but how hospitals, how the medical profession, how they can get away from the whole, guns are bad, guns are evil, and how they, these individuals might have been able to protect themselves. If you could stick around.
Sure, absolutely.
You're listening to Arms Room Radio, coming to you live from the Kel-Tec studios. We'll see you after the break. The chief surgeon of Arms Room Radio, and we're talking about the hospital shooting at the Bronx-Lebanon Hospital in Bronx, New York. Dr. John, thank you for hanging in there. Before we left, we wanted to get into what can hospitals do to change this. This is somebody who illegally brought a firearm he never should have had, one that should have been caught by their background checks that would eliminate it, by the SAFE Act that should have made sure this firearm couldn't have hurt anybody. How can the hospital prevent, and what are you guys doing as the Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership to prevent this kind of thing from happening?
Well, there's not a way to prevent it using gun control laws. That's the real issue here, is that the laws failed, and they always fail. If you look at all the mass shootings, either the person passed the background check because background checks are retrospective, or in the case of this guy, he wasn't prosecuted for a felony. He plea bargained down to a misdemeanor, which left him eligible to purchase a firearm using the background check system.
Right.
So that's the first failure. Gun control we know doesn't work. Okay, it only controls the law abiding. It doesn't control the criminal or those who are bound and determined to wreak havoc and murder. So what can we do? Well, first of all, in New York State, it's almost impossible unless you were worth millions of dollars and know somebody to get some kind of a concealed license. And even then, hospitals are supposedly gun-free zones, right up until the point when they're not.
Right. In New York City. Yeah.
Yeah, New York City.
Yeah.
And in Texas, our hospitals are gun-free zones too.
Right.
So it's not just New York State.
Right.
In fact, most of the states around the states around the country, hospitals are gun-free zones. In fact, I think it was in Kansas. They just tried to get rid of that gun-free zones in hospitals, and they wouldn't do it. So the legislature, for some reason, thinks that hospitals are magical places where guns ought not to be in the hands of good people, only in the hands of murderers and crazy people. Okay.
Well, that's it. And Dr. John, that's the argument you hear is we don't want guns in the hospital because there's crazy people at hospitals.
Yeah, there's crazy people at hospitals, whether you want them to be or not, and you don't know because they walk in the front door.
Yeah, and listen.
Okay, so that doesn't help.
Yeah, crazy people are not exclusive to hospitals, and this is not okay. Listen, everybody here at the hospital, line up, get your guns before you come in. What do they think is going on? That's just not the case.
Right, and so what I've been advocating is to allow hospital employees, hospital staff who have concealed handgun licenses or licenses to carry or, CCW, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, whatever it's called in your state, to be able to carry while they're working discreetly. And also, and I think even better would be to have them train. And the model is the FASTER program in Ohio and now in Colorado, where they take school teachers and school administrators and school employees and teach them not only marksmanship but also trauma first aid. And so having them both carrying and trained, because frankly the only way you're going to stop this person, unless they decide, okay, I'm done, I'm going to shoot myself, is you're either going to have somebody with a gun to take the guy out, or you're going to have to rush the nut, as Anthony Calandro in New Jersey likes to say.
Exactly. Now, Dr. John, hold on one second for me, because you know what? I've got Major Bill on the line. Let me bring Major Bill in here also, because there's a couple questions where we can talk about them amongst all of ourselves here. First off, please welcome to the program Major Bill. Major Bill is the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of Arms Room Radio. Major Bill, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Dr. John, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, and congratulations on your promotion. Well deserved.
Thank you very much.
Now, let me ask you, gentlemen, this. Major Bill, Dr. John just said, perhaps if the staff, the doctors wanted to take training, they could have somebody trained with firearms. And listen, it's the same way, like you said, with Ohio. You get people that either have concealed permits, they have a military background, law enforcement background, even if it was just for a couple of years in military, but they have no problem and they want to carry those firearms there. Is this something law enforcement agencies should be helping hospitals with? If they say, listen, we're going to carry, could you help us with the training? Is that something agencies would do?
Oh, absolutely. I know we partner with hospitals in our area down here. We do active shooter, active killer training, and there's a lot of the emergency room doctors that we deal with that are well trained. They're armed. They have their concealed permits, and they come out and they work with us, and they work with our first responders, the officers that are out there. This would be something excellent for us to do, because the only really in a situation like that up in the Bronx or anywhere in a hospital like that is the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is to have a good guy with a gun. And it's going to take some time for police to respond. Even if they have a detail officer there at the hospital, odds have it that officer is going to be at the opposite end of where the situation is happening.
Yeah, and Dr. John, if you guys, had this, if this was part of the defense plan, the emergency plan there at the hospital, this clearly would help to prevent these type, or not prevent, but end these type of scenarios rather quickly. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, having people dispersed throughout the hospital who are armed would make them more likely to be in the right place at the right time and to stop these things, nip them in the bud before they get really going. Because the police officer, the hospital that I work in is 10 stories high, okay, and it covers an entire city block.
Right.
So how is he going to, first of all, find it and get there and in a reasonable period of time? And if you're carrying your gear and you're humping up 10 flights of stairs to get this thing, by the time you get there, you're already gassed, and now you got to get into a gunfight. Yeah, that's a pretty tall order. So having the person on the scene armed right there, the best chance of stopping it. Plus, you can also defend an area. You can get to an access point because your patients aren't going anywhere. They cannot run.
Right. They
cannot hide. They're stuck where they're at. They are, and so if there's somebody that can block access to a ward or a wing or whatever, at a strategic point, and this is something that you think about in your practice, that's going to make the patients, it's going to make the families, it's going to make the staff safer, and it will act as a deterrent, because if the word gets out that, X hospital has armed staff, well, if you're a crazy guy, you're probably not going to go try to shoot up X hospital. You're going to go to Y hospital, whose staff isn't armed, because you're looking for the easy score, the numbers, all the stuff that we see with these active shooter killer guys.
Don't be the softest
target. They're out
target.
there to get the big numbers.
Yeah, don't be the softest target.
Yeah, no, listen.
Right. Now, the only pushback that I've received in talking with different facilities and stuff like that is a lot of the hospitals, some are county run, some are private, but regardless, they see the liability. What if it's a bad shoot? What if this? What if that? And we can what if a scenario all day long. But the whole point is, we're there to protect the patients. We're there to protect the staff. And I think hospital administrations need to see beyond that and see what a liability it is if they don't do something, especially if it is out there and available.
Right. And as I've said many times before, the only way they're going to change their minds, when the corporate lawyers start talking to the administrators, they're saying, well, look, as long as you have the gun-free zone sign in front of your hospital, you're covered.
Yeah, sure.
Well, when there's a massacre at a hospital and there's a multi-million/billion-dollar lawsuit settlement, that's when they're going to start thinking out of the box and saying, maybe we should do something different. And until that happens, things aren't going to change just because it's the status quo. And it's hard to change corporations. The hospitals that I work in, it's a big corporation. It's multi-state. It's a national corporation.
Dr. John, we got a break coming up here. We got to let you go. Hey, how can everybody stay in touch and see what you're doing?
Yeah, we're at drgo.us. We're on Facebook at Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. So look for us there. There's always stuff out there. We put 2 blog posts out, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, and we're on the Facebook every day. Outstanding. Dr. John, thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks, back on a regularly scheduled time slot for you here on the program. And hey, listen, everybody, stick around. We'll be back to the program. Major Bill will be back with us for the last segment, and we'll see you in a couple of minutes.